Hi everyone, Emily here from Emily's Excellent Epics, and today I have for you my June wrap up. So this is going to be covering the second half of June because I did film a mid-month wrap up, which I'm glad I did. I read 20 books in June. So that's what happens when you uh, are working over the summer and you're single and you don't have children. You have lots of free time on your hands. So I ended up reading 20 books in June. So this goes over the second half. So before we do that, let's kind of go over. I did read 18 print books, one ebook, and one audiobook. And my favorite book of this month, I've already talked about. My favorite book of the month was Sword of Kaigan. So I'm going to use my book journal to kind of help me remember some plot points. So if I look down, because I'm looking at my book journal. All right. So first up, in the second half of June, I read Summer in the City by Alec Astor. And yes, I did cave and buy the Barnes & Noble special edition because these spread edges are just absolutely adorable. And it does have like the map of New York City and a little heart on the front. I gave this one 5 stars. And now here's the thing. I'm giving it 5 stars as like, this is a romance novel. How is it as a romance novel and my enjoyment level for it? I really enjoyed this. I thought it did a really good job dealing with grief and just bad parents. We follow, Elle and Parker, and Elle is in this city over the summer. She's trying to write a screenplay, but she's got writer's block. And Parker takes her on all these mini adventures around the city that relate to different locations that she needs to put in her screenplay. And it really is. Now, I have never been to New York. There's parts of me that really would like to go to New York because I would love to see a show on Broadway. There's also that part of me that's just like, oh, the amount of people, the costs, the traffic. I don't know if I could handle New York City. So I've never been to New York City, but I really felt like this was a love letter to New York City, just with all of the different locations and the descriptions of it. So I really appreciated that. I also really appreciated some of the handling of like the third act beats. At one hand, I was just like, oh, why are you doing that? On the other hand, I appreciate why that third act needed to happen and how it was handled. And I think it was the right move for that character to establish herself and be like, no, I earned this. This was not given to me by anyone. Um, and I don't think the character who did the giving understood why that was so important to that character. Sorry, trying to talk and be spoilery to avoid too much spoilers. Um, yeah, so super enjoyed this. This is a romance that I would keep. Sometimes romances I get rid of because shelf space. But I would keep this one, not only just because it's pretty, but I do see myself potentially picking this up again because I did enjoy it. The next book I've read I don't have a copy of it anymore because it was a library book. So I read All Systems Red by Martha Wells, which is the first book in the Murderbot series. I did watch like episodes 1 through 6 of Murderbot. I haven't watched later episodes. My subscription to Apple Plus I canceled stupidly. What was I thinking? So I need to like re-sign up so I can finish out the season 1 of Murderbot. But I'm trying to watch like all the different streaming services that I subscribe to. But I enjoyed the book All Systems Red. I do think our Murderbot is more murderous in the book than he is, or they are, I'm sorry, they are on the TV series. Like the TV series, I feel like is a little bit more campy than um, the book, and I was not expecting the ending to murder the the novella. I was not expecting that, which I did like. I like the fact that our Murderbot shows more agency, which I'm not sure how that works given that they are a robot programmed by humans. I don't know. But again, I'm a Terminator fan, so yeah, I guess it works. Um, Sorry, I wanted to do a little camera adjustment there for a minute. Um, I will say this, what I liked as far as there is some differences between the TV series and the novella. What I liked about the TV series that the novella does not do. So our Murderbot, he's a security bot, and he's a security unit. So his goal, his job, his programming is to make sure that humans are safe. But all he wants to do is just watch space operas. And we don't get what the space operas are in the book. Like, I mean, he mentions what he watches, but not like we don't get the scenes from them. And in the series we do, and I think it's so delightful and so campy. So yeah. Um, Ooh, I also read the Bunnicula collection, which I don't know if I accounted for it. So maybe it was 21 books I read this month. I don't know. But I read the Bunnicula collection, and I don't remember who wrote it. James Howe, I believe. So I listened to it on audio, and Victor Garber narrated it. He is so fantastic as a narrator. Like I gave this 4.5 stars. So the Bunnicula collection in our first book, we follow these two pets, Chester, who's a cat, and Howard, who's a dog. And their family finds a bunny at the movie theater. And the movie that's playing is Dracula. And Chester is convinced that Bunnicula is a vampire rabbit. But Bunnicula does not eat like blood. Bunnicula will suck the juice out of the vegetables and turns them white. So Chester thinks, oh my gosh, Bunnicula is a vampire bunny. That's book 1. Book 2, the family. So it was 3 books in this bind up. Book 2 was the family goes on vacation, and Chester and Howard are taken to like a pet, I don't want to say hospital, a boarding house, a boarding place for pets. And this is the book where I feel like Victor Garber really shone, because all the different animals had voices, and he did such a fantastic job narrating the different animals. Like one was a French dog, one was kind of like a scruffy, like I just pictured him as like an old like school mafia boss. Like it was so, or like a tough guy, like fighter, boxer dog, I guess. So good, so cute. The third book, to be honest, I struggled paying attention to. Where the books failed, I feel like book 1 really was about Bunnicula. Book 2, Bunnicula is mentioned, and then like not like mentioned but not in it, because Bunnicula stays over at someone else's house. The Bunnicula does not go to the pet boarding house. And then in book 3, Bunnicula kind of escapes the neighborhood, and it was okay. I was a little distracted on book 3, I'll be honest. All right, moving on to a 5-star read. This will always be a 5-star read for me. And this is a reread for An Ember in the Ashes. This is my first time like tabbing the book. I have not annotated it before. So this is Ember and the Ashes by Sabaa Tahir. And in this book, we follow Leia and Elias. And Leia, she is a member of the Scholar class. And the Scholar class are one step above slaves. They are oppressed by like our illustrian and our martial class, and they're basically meant to serve those two classes following rebellions. And she is a member of the Scholar class, and at the beginning of this story, her parents are dead. We know this. They were part of this rebel faction, and they have died. And at the start of the book, a group of masks who are part of this martial class. They're brutal, they're deadly, they're enforcers. They show up at her doorstep where she lives with her grandparents and her brother Darren. And they say that Darren is a rebel, and they imprison him and they kill her grandparents in front of her eyes. And so she goes to the rebels to try to help her brother escape the prison, and they agree to help her, but she must move to Black Cliff, which is a school designed to train masks, and she has to go there and be the spy for the commandant, who is the leader of this school. And it's highly dangerous, as most slaves who work for the commandant don't last all that long. Elias is a student at Black Cliff, and he doesn't want to be there anymore. And he is a mask. He's about on the verge of graduation, and he doesn't want to be there anymore. And that's where we set up. I could talk more about this book, but I don't want to give too much away. I have read the whole series, and I've read this book 3 or 4 times now. And I'll be honest and say I don't remember as much in later books as I do in this book, because I've read this more. But I do remember like the big plot points in like the later books. And so it was fascinating to me to read this and go, oh my gosh, this was here all along, and I just didn't see it, but now I do. Sabaa Tahir has laid the groundwork for the bigger plot points in book 4, and it's amazing to see. And I'm so glad that more people are reading this for the first time and enjoying it. I'm reading this, Krista over at Books and Jams and Sarah over at Sarah's Nightstand, they're doing a read-along for this. And so it's so delightful to see more people picking this book up. I feel like this series is so underrated, and I'm so glad it's getting more love and attention that this book deserves. So, yay, Ember and the Ashes. All right, the next book I read was The Dead Romantics by Ashley Poston. And I gave this 4 stars. Okay, so last year I read The 7-Year Slip during the Amazing Readathon. So I read this during the Amazing Readathon this year. In the author's note in the back, and I kind of skimmed the author's note, she says something like, hold on. I feel like I feel like she said something about how like death scares her. Yes, she says death scares me. That's the crux of it. Death itself and all its ferocious unknowns scares the living crap out of me. Okay, it kind of showed. Which is fascinating because, I mean, she wrote 7-Year Slip after this book. And I felt like she really handled death and grief really well in 7-Year Slip. In this book, not so much. I felt like rather than dealing with I need to back up. So the premise of this book is that, Florence Day, she's a ghostwriter for a famous romance author, and she's got writer's block. And she meets her new editor. He's attractive. And then she finds out that her father has passed away. Her father owns a funeral home. And so she travels back to her small town after being gone for 10 years to plan his funeral and take care of things at home. And while she's there, she sees the ghost of her editor, who apparently died right after their meeting. And because she can see ghosts and talk to them. Okay, so it became basically insta-lovey, where she falls in love with someone within a week time. I don't like that. Like, I don't like insta-love. And that's basically what this was. And I don't feel like it really dealt with the grieving. Like, it didn't have the beats for dealing with the grief as well as it could have. It became more like, let's fall in love with this person. And you shouldn't be doing that when you're grieving someone. Like, that's something that they say, like, just like that when you're initially grieving a big loss, like, you don't want to make big changes because you need to deal with that grief. And I don't feel like that happened. So that's why again, it felt very insta-lovey. So I'm kind of sad. I wanted to like this more because I knew it was going to be dealing with grief. And I love it when authors really deal well with grief, and I don't feel like this did it. So will I be keeping this book? Nope. I will be unhauling this. So then I read, I didn't read all of her Kingdom Unbounded. I read The Secret History. And The Secret History takes place following events from Mistborn: The Final Empire. So the first book in Mistborn Era 1. And it takes place concurrently, like during events for the Well of Ascension and Hero of Ages. And it takes place in the cognitive realm or the spiritual realm. And that's really all I can say without it giving spoilers away. It was rough. It was a rough read for me. I gave it 3 stars because it just dragged. There were so many times where it dragged, and it was a novella, and it dragged. And I'm like, I could read Rhythm of War at 1,200 pages, and it doesn't feel like it's dragging. Less than 200 pages, and it was a slog. There are some important beats that are necessary for Cosmere information, but I could have done without all the sloggy parts. So, am I glad I read Secret History? Yes, because it's part of the canon for Cosmere. It does give some important beats, but do I remember those important beats? Not really. So, I don't know. I don't know what to say about that. But I'm glad, am I glad I read it? Yes, because I'm a completionist. All right. Finally, we have a really good book. It was highly anticipated for me. I gave it 4.5 stars, and that's Say You'll Remember Me by Abby Jimenez. And this follows Samantha and Xavier. And they meet because Xavier is a vet, and Samantha comes in with a cat that she finds and rescues. Here's the problem that I have with this cover. The cat has more screen time in the book than the dog. And I know Abby Jimenez loves dogs, so that's why we have a dog on the cover. But I feel like the cat should have been on the cover, not the dog. Just saying. I know some people. So what I liked about this book. Okay. First of all, they compare Xavier to Rhysand from ACOTAR. Now, I know some people don't like that. I loved it. Here's why. Um, because it really made it more like real for me in that sense of like people are, you know, it just kind of made me think like, oh man, she's reading Akatar, and so of course she's going to talk about her friends and Xavier with her friends and compare him to a famous series. I just thought that was delightful. Um, I also like Xavier. He's my new book boyfriend. Like he just is such a gentleman and caring, um, and just how he looks out for people and takes care for them. He doesn't like announce it. He just does all the small things and that are huge and important for people. But he just quietly goes about it without calling attention to it and really caring for people. Um, I also really liked how it dealt with caregiving for parents and caregiving for parents with dementia. I thought that was beautifully done. And then how do we navigate a long distance relationship in that? There is a plot point with her father that I understand why it was written. And I understand what the father was saying. It doesn't mean that it's right though. Like to me, like I understand why you feel that way, but I'm just also like you took vows. You took vows and it bothered me. And again, I understand because other people have done that and have used the father's rationale. I just it bothered me. It you took vows. So that's why I knocked off half a star because I did not like that plot point. All right, I need to talk faster. Sorry. Then I read Rose Haven by Catherine Coulter. First of all, can we talk about how beautifully old school and vintage that cover is? It's so delightful. I love it. This is a historical romance that came out in 1996. Okay. I gave this one 3 stars. Now, I read this years ago when it came out, maybe in college, maybe like post college, but I, I read this right around the time period that it came out. Okay. It's interesting because I'm like, I don't think this would fly well with modern audiences, but I also feel like this is kind of like historical romances from the 90s, and I don't read bully romances. I don't, but I'm like, this is kind of like plot points for bully romances. Um, so our we follow Hastings and Severin. Hastings, her father is dying, and of course, she's the only female child of her father. So we need to protect her from people who want to swoop in and marry her and control her money because this is set shortly in the Middle Ages after um, one of the Crusades. And Severin, her father has picked Severin to marry her to keep um, keep his holdings in the family, and Severin needs money to repair his estate. Severin is awful in how he treats Hastings. I mean, he basically essays her. Doesn't think, though, that it's essay, but he does. And, like, basically is like, okay, like, you're my wife, therefore you must obey me in what I say, which is the mentality of that time, okay? And he only kind of softens to her and starts to fall in love with her after Hastings is given advice by women and basically says, you need to bend to him and just like laugh and make him life happier and, approach him. And And she does. She follows that advice and her marriage gets better. But like he doesn't, but he still is kind of a jerk in how he views her and other women until later. And yeah, so it was a little rough. But at the time that I read this, when it first came out, I absolutely loved this book. I know I did. Like I really like all of these books that came out in the time I really enjoyed, and now I'm just like, ooh, it's rough. So it's beautiful. It's a beautiful cover. It's so vintage. I love it. This will be going to my Pango shop. So yeah. All right. Then I listened to Stuck With You by Allie Hazelwood. This was for a sightseeing prompt for the Amazing Readathon because we needed to read a book where the author had a pen name. I didn't realize Allie Hazelwood was a pen name, but it is. So Stuck With You is a woman in STEM, and she gets stuck in an elevator with a man who she had kind of a one-day/night fling with, and then finds out he was like his company outbid her smaller company on a project, and miscommunication as to why that all went about. It was okay. It was a 3-star. I mean, it was good. I enjoyed it, but it wasn't great. All right. Then another book that was a 3-star book, and that is Left of Forever by Tara DeWitt. This is the second book in the Spoons series. I have not read book 1. And honestly, you could read this book without having read book 1. It was okay. So in this, we follow Ren and Ellis. And Ren and Ellis, at 17, Ren becomes pregnant. And they raise their child together. They do eventually get married like a few years after he's born. And then they get divorced. And now Sam, their son, has graduated. They've been divorced 5 years. He's graduated high school. And they're going to drive him down to college in California. And on the way back, they are going to take a trip to see, like, can they rekindle their love? And I should mention there are trigger warnings for ectopic pregnancy and miscarriage. Okay. I thought the beginning was really good. Like, I really liked it. They started to kind of begin to talk about things that bothered each other, upset them during their marriage. They started to begin to have some of those open communication dialogues they needed to have. However, it quickly turned, like, it was weird because I don't feel like they really talked in depth about, like, the last year or so of events that led up to their divorce that were major events that needed to be dealt with. And I don't feel like they had an in-depth conversation about that. At one point on their vacation, they're like, we're going to take things slow. They did not take things slow. It was a lot of hot and heavy stuff and very open door. And it became that's like the last third, almost half of the book was basically all about that. And it just was sex scene after sex scene after sex scene, which it like one or two, fine, whatever. It's a romance book. I expect that, but it just became so excessive. I just was like, let's skip. I was like, oh man, another one, skip, another one, skip. It was too much. And there was even one part that kind of sets up the whole story for that she finds out about and is upset about. And it's like, oh, well, here's why I did this. And I was going to tell you, remember I said this right when we were having sex? Remember? I was going to tell you about it. She's like, oh, okay, thanks. You're going to tell me now. Good. Okay. Problem solved. Discussion over. It just resolved some of it a little too quickly. So that's why this is a 3-star. I was disappointed because it could have gone, it could have been a really good, meaningful, powerful a book dealing with some of those topics, and it just wasn't. So this too will be up in my Pango shop. And then lastly, I read In Flight by Noelle Adams. I've read pretty much everything that she's published. She does publish under another name by Claire Kent. I have not read anything by Claire Kent. Claire Kent is more dystopian romance. Noelle Adams is more contemporary rom-com-y type romance. So this one I gave 3 stars. It was a novella, kind of light and fluffy. This follows River and Isaac. And River and Isaac, so River lives in Savannah, Georgia. And she flies to Boston every weekend because she's helping her family plan her sister's wedding. And Isaac lives in Boston, but he's working in Savannah. So every week he has to fly down to Savannah. So he flies home to Boston every weekend. And so they meet sitting next to each other on the plane, and they spark a romance. I knew what it was going into it. It's going to be kind of light, fluffy, enjoyable, just a light read. What I don't appreciate is there were some miscommunication moments in this, and I'm just kind of getting tired of miscommunication. Just talk to each other, and so many of the problems will be resolved. And that's kind of like why we have the romance conflict is miscommunication. But I just talk to each other, please. So that's why it was a 3-star. So I already talked. So that is what I read. I already talked about 3 books that I'm unhauling this month. I'm going to talk briefly. Off screen, picking up the books from the floor. I'm going to briefly talk about 4 more books that I'm going to unhaul and are going to be in my Pango shop if they're not already. First, I'm going to unhaul Babylonia by Constanza Kazati. I don't know. So the premise sounds really good. It's set in ancient Assyria. So I read 50 pages of this for a detour for the Amazing Readathon. And I was just like, ooh, I don't know if I'm going to like anybody. So, like, our main characters, I'm not sure if I'm going to like them. So, and I want a book where I can root for someone and like them. And after 50 pages, I was not sure that that was going to happen. And so it needs to go. I'm getting rid of Reader, I Married Him by Tracy. This is edited by Tracy Chevalier. Their story is inspired by Jane Eyre. I'm not a big short story reader. I picked this up thinking I would read it, and I'm not going to. So I need to pass on that. I'm getting rid of Jane in Love by Rachel Givney. This is basically Jane Austen time travels to Bath, and she's on a movie set for Northanger Abbey, and it's a romance. I don't know. The cover is beautiful, but I just don't think I'm going to read it. And then this isn't a bad book. I really enjoyed it when I read it. Inkblood Sister Scribe by Emma Torres. I don't know how to pronounce her last name. I'm so sorry. This is about a family who guards like this collection of books, and that allows you to kind of like control, like they're magical. I really enjoyed this book when it came out. I just look at it, I'm like, I probably won't reread it. So, and I need to make shelf space. So that's why I'm passing this along. If you're doing the hardest reading challenge you'll ever do, you know that we have an around the world prompt, and Antarctica is not required. It is a bonus. Part of this book does take place in Antarctica because one of the sisters works at in Antarctica. So that's what I'm getting rid of. I'm not doing my haul because I'm waiting for 5 books to arrive. Right? 5, 1, 2. No. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 books to arrive. And I have some more. So I'm going to do a separate video for my haul. But where does that leave me for numbers for my in and outs? Okay. I don't know. I don't remember if I updated my spreadsheet to include Rosehaven and like the 3 that I read this month that I'm unhauling. So I don't remember if I included that. So at the beginning of the month, I had 721 total books owned. I now have 740. So that went up by 19. I read 312 at the beginning of the month. Now I have 317 read. So that went up by 5, so that's good. However, my unread books at the start of this month was 409. It's now 423. So at the beginning of June, I had 56.73% of my books were unread. Now I have 57.16% unread. So we went up, not the direction I wanted to go. I want to go down. The good news in all of this is because I am going to be doing the hardest reading challenge you'll ever do. And I'm really focused on this. And a lot of the books that I have on it were books I was planning on reading right away within the year anyway. So it worked out perfectly. So there's very few books on my hardest reading challenge you'll ever do that I don't own already or that I can't access at the library. So hopefully book buying will slow down. But we shall see. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for watching to the end if you've made it this far. Why don't you put either a flame emoji if you're not sure what to comment on. Use a flame emoji for Ember in the Ashes or a little car like a taxi cab for Summer in the City. And have you read any of these books? What were your thoughts? Or what was your favorite book that you read in June? Mine was Sword of Kaigen. And so far, Sword of Kaigen is my favorite book of the year. It was that good. Like, I can't wait to reread it. Like, it's that good. So, thank you so much for watching. Like, subscribe, hit the notification button, and have a wonderful day. Bye.